This is Twit.
Well, let's jump right in. I mean, we're kind of talking about coronavirus. We're talking about COVID-19, and we've seen a lot of cancellations taking place. I think it was Google I/O was just canceled. We saw F8 a lot earlier, and also now South by Southwest is sort of having a conversation. It's an active situation.
Mobile World Congress was maybe among the first big shows to cancel.
To go. So what do
GDC.
Yeah, GDC. Oh, yeah, I forgot about GDC. Microsoft originally pulled out, and then shortly after, GDC said, no, we're not doing it. How is it affecting the world of Microsoft? Are there upcoming conferences that maybe...
Yeah.
A little bit.
We're all waiting.
A little bit.
We're all waiting about Build, right? That's the one we're pretty sure
definitely going to cancel
is going to
Build.
be canceled, right? Build is May 19th to 21st in Seattle. And so far Microsoft hasn't canceled it.
Yeah.
Which is
if you were to look at a map of the United States, and they have these maps obviously where they'll color the areas where there are outbreaks, and then the areas that are really bad are darker colors. San Francisco, Seattle, East Coast stuff, whatever. There's only one place in this entire country that's safe right now, and that's Eastern Montana. And what I'm suggesting is that the three of us should possibly move there right now. And then we'll be safe.
We'll be good.
And we'll set up Build out of Montana.
Oh,
that's right. That's where you could have Build.
You'll rebuild.
Rebuild, build.
Yep.
Nice.
Like so many post-apocalyptic TV shows and movies, it's all about the rebuilding.
I've been watching The Last Man on Earth for some reason, and I had watched it before. I started watching it before coronavirus, and this whole thing kicked off. But now this show is not at all funny. It's kind of grim.
Yeah. Most of those shows are not funny, but yeah, most of the stories around post-apocalyptic stuff.
Yeah,
it doesn't fall into the humor category.
It's
usually
meant to be a comedy, and it would be.
And it's still kind of bleak.
Yeah, if there wasn't this situation right now where they're kind of trying to find new places to go to, and every place they go to is, oh no, we can't be here. But speaking of, now I went to Microsoft.com/build, and I don't know, have they always had this this little note at the top up about, in light of the global health concerns, we're monitoring stuff?
That's not new to today, but it's relatively new.
It was March 2nd.
Oh, there's the date there at the end. Yeah.
So that the reason they put that up is obviously everyone's asking about Build, but mostly because they just canceled the in-person version of their Microsoft Most Valuable Professional Summit, the MVP Summit, which was going to be in 2 weeks, I think, in Seattle also. And so
10 days, I think.
So everybody, once that got canceled, everyone's like, so what about Build, right? And so far, they haven't said Build is canceled. And part of the reason, my guess is they're trying to figure out, okay, how do we pull this off if it becomes a virtual event, right?
Or, and rescheduling is a nightmare.
Or rescheduling.
Impossible.
I know.
Because the venue that they're at is probably booked for the rest of the year.
Right.
They could start looking at other places, but they have other shows coming. They do shows in this. It's not really open to the press, but they have a show in the summer. And Build this year, they actually moved up 2 months back to September. And you have to kind of wonder about that too. But I think
Ignite, right? Yeah. So it goes Build, and then Inspire, and then Ignite. Those are their three big shows, right? So you get Seattle, Las Vegas, and New Orleans for us.
I've got all my joke headlines ready to go. Cortanavirus, also Microsoft Expire.
Oh, my goodness.
Dude, too soon.
Yeah.
Ready to pull them out.
We are in the midst. Oh, dear.
Yikes.
Now, the dark humor is just coming fast and furious.
But. How big of a deal is how big of a meetup is this MVP summit? Is this a small stakes kind of thing, or is it a bigger situation where you go, wow, they canted that, so Build should be next?
I mean, it's hundreds of thousands of people, but it's a private event. Obviously, it's a lot of it is disclosures to those people ahead of Build, right? And that's something I feel like they could handle virtually pretty easily. I mean, for the MVPs themselves, the big part of it is going to see everybody. They get to see other MVPs. Right. They get to see the Microsoft people who work in part of the company that, is their expertise or whatever. So, that's disappointing, but Hopefully this is a one-time thing.
Right. Just sort of this year. Yeah. I had a conversation this morning, a podcast I do called Clockwise, and we were sort of talking about the future of conferences and whether this one sort of situation is going to impact those, because maybe companies will go, oh, we can do this virtually. We were forced to scramble to it. But I don't know. I mean, there's still something to be said for the in-person stuff, right?
Sorry to interrupt. There are two aspects to this. When Mobile World Congress was canceled, I half-jokingly said on Twitter and I think on a podcast that this is going to teach companies that they don't have to spend all this money to go to this place to meet with customers, et cetera. Not all companies, but I mean, I think there'll be some fallout along those lines. But the other aspect to this is that, the coronavirus isn't like the plague or something. It's like the flu, right? This is something that could happen all the time. It could be a yearly event, just like the flu. And if that's the case, I mean, at some point you have to just decide collectively whether or not, I don't think this ends conferences, but I mean, at some point, even, say it's 2021 and Mobile World Congress is on the dock again, and we're having a coronavirus outbreak, and maybe for that year they just do it, and people can decide to go or not go based on their risk aversion levels or whatever.
Yeah, because
go ahead. Or like Mikah says, companies who have marketing budgets, they see this year, look what we saved by not having this conference in person.
Yeah.
Why don't we always do this? Right?
Well, no, because sometimes in person helps. I mean, if you're a big company like Microsoft, and we're talking about Microsoft conferences, like let's say they're going to cancel Build. I mean, they have to. I can't imagine. Seattle is one of the hotbeds for this thing right now. So what are the options? What are the options there? Obviously, virtual events. Microsoft does tours. Microsoft can have regional events. They could have a U.S. only event that's smaller, or a couple of them in a couple parts of the country. They could go to Asia. They could go to Europe. They could go elsewhere. I think the harder bit is in some ways not those big companies. It's the smaller companies that rely on these shows to meet with customers and with partners and other people. And they rely on, for reporters, it's kind of nice to go to one big show and meet with a bunch of different people if it's a Microsoft show, or companies if it's something like CES or Mobile World Congress or whatever. So I don't know. I mean, they're not going to go away completely. But it is an interesting, there may be a lot less of them,
Yeah, because if you look at how we, the press, get our information now when it leads up to these conferences, what they do is they pre-brief us usually, right? So they give us these things called the Book of News, and they're just giant PDFs of all the news that they're going to make, all the major announcements. So we have that usually a week or a few days at least ahead of the event, right? So we get our stories ready. Then when the event happens and we watch the keynote, we see all the things that we knew were going to happen, and we see that happen. I mean, sometimes we get to go to sessions, but often we do not. And luckily, all the sessions anymore are online. Right. So that doesn't really matter. The part that matters the most, I think, to me when I go is meetups. Right. And also one-on-one meetings with people from Microsoft about various products or strategies.
And random drive-bys. You're just walking down the hall and look, there's Mark Brzezinowicz or whatever. Or in the sessions you mentioned, we don't as we can as press go to the sessions. It's just that we're often so busy we can't. Right. And so if you want to know the content of the session, like Mary Jo said, you can go and watch it later. But sometimes it's nice just to drop by the room and meet the speaker because it's someone you heard of through blog posts or on Twitter or something, and you've never actually seen them in person. And I think it is the in-person stuff that you can't replace. You just can't with virtual anything.
It isn't the same. I mean, it is why sort of there is that groan of every time you've got a meeting and you're doing it all over Google Hangouts or something like that. You kind of it's just not the same. And I think on an individual level, that's when you separate it. So yes, a big company, I think they can look at that and go, oh, wow, there's money to be saved here. But when you look at it from an individual level, people really do get something out of that, especially those of us who are sort of in tech and consumer journalism. A lot of us work from home, or
this is our chance to get out.
Exactly.
No, we work in our little caves, and a couple times a year we head out. And it's like a big family reunion. We see the other people who do what we do. We see the people from the companies that we care about.
It's a reminder that they're all real. They're not just a little icon that you see on social media.
Well, what you said is very interesting. I work for a very small company. We have weekly meetings, and there are several of those. I'm only involved in one every single week usually. And then every once in a while, we'll, quarterly or whatever it is, we'll all meet in New York or Colorado, wherever it is. And we tend to get more stuff done in those in-person meetings than in all of the virtual meetings combined, in a way, because there's something about them that just generates a more meaningful kind of feedback and interaction. And then you walk out the door like, oh, wow, we really accomplished something, So there's something very real to that, to me.
Yeah.
Now, there was supposed to be, we were expecting a hardware event in April or May.
That's the one that's going to be really interesting, right? So, for our software announcements, cloud announcements, you can say virtual works pretty well. You can do demos on your own, or you can watch a demo. But when it comes to new devices, and the way the press works on that is, we see this like the last Surface event. The press comes in, they surround these devices, take pictures from every angle, hold them, touch them, if they're allowed, right?
Yeah, I almost got in a fist fight at the last Surface event because some guy tried to bogart one of the machines I was taking pictures of, and it's like, dude, this is for everybody. It's not just for you. You can handle that in different ways too. I mean, HP, Lenovo, and Dell, they have virtual events for their device launches, and sometimes, like HP will do this. They'll send a laptop ahead, and it will arrive like the day of the event.
That's kind of what I was wondering if that's what they'll do here.
Right.
Yeah, and you can do that kind of a thing. Now, the problem, the Microsoft thing is a little squishy because I don't know, whatever the number of people that walk in that door and they're fighting over getting pictures of the devices for some reason, only some percentage of them actually get the devices for review. Yeah. And that's an interesting situation too, and Microsoft just has fewer of them to give out. They're just not a big PC maker.
And how will they show someone playing piano if it's
right?
So there'll be an annoying video of someone's daughter.
No, but that's their whole thing. Like if you look at how they do these events, right? They want to create like this ambiance, right? Yeah. They want to have a story and a video, and like they have certain music, and they have a setup with like. Last time with the Surface event, it was like flowers everywhere with all the surfaces artistically arranged with the flowers, right?
Like it was nice.
Yeah.
I love the idea they ship you a box and it's got one of those IKEA diagrams in it, and it tells you how to set it up.
Yeah.
Right. If you were here, this is what it would look like. Right?
Well, here's something awkward to think about. I mean, outside of Microsoft, Apple events are usually in front of a very large audience. They're usually very enthusiastic about even the stupidest of announcements. I mean, try to imagine a virtual Apple event where they announce a, new iPhone or something to the open air. Are they going to have canned laughter? Like it's
they'll have canned laughter. They will.
Oh no!
They'll have canned clapping.
If you want to see like how superficial that stuff is, try to imagine something like that without the audience.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yep, just speaking to dead air.
And I mean, and some, presenters really do feed off of that energy there. That's why I have canned laughter and applause in the studio. You can't hear it.
That's right. That's
piped directly into mine. But without it, I don't know what I'd do. And that's going to be interesting. I mean, any hardware event going forward. Oh, that's just some laughter for me. See?
There it is.
Arnold delayed, just walking the door.
But even if they have like a smaller event in New York, like or like in different big cities where they say, okay, everyone from the West Coast come to San Francisco, or everyone from the East Coast come to New York. That's still going to be risky if coronavirus takes off like they're thinking, right?
Yes.
That's why you go to Montana, Mary Jo. We've already solved that.
Is that why? Okay,
good. But we're going to be bringing coronavirus to Montana, is my concern.
How would you even get there? I have no idea.
Oh, man. Well, I think we're going to see all of these hardware events doing this, and it'll be interesting, I think, to see how they do end up handling that. Because certainly I like the idea of a box shipped to the door with the review units in it or something like that. Maybe
but that's also, but it's also a tough one because in Microsoft's case, I can speak most clearly to Microsoft. They can at least kind of keep that private, right? So if you aren't going to get one or any of the devices to review, at least you could go to the event.
Oh,
you know?
I see. Yeah.
But now it's like, what are you going to do? You're going to, I mean, I guess you could still have a virtual event and only some people got them. And I'm sure they'll be like, guys, don't say anything like you got it early, but they won't mention it on the live feed or something. But I mean, it gets into a weird situation. The whole thing is weird.
That's where it kind of hurts smaller companies and things like that. These,
or you're just, randomly excluded, which is something Microsoft does to people.
We're used to that, but.
So yeah, I mean, look, we don't know how this is going to go down. But
you know what's going to be interesting though? How do they do the virtual event, right? Like, what technologies do they use, and how do they make it so that certain parts of the audience can see part of the content and part of it's protected, right? Because some of it's going to be NDA, some's not.
You're talking
so
about
it's going to get interesting.
They're going to use Azure presentation on the edge.
I mean, look, in the scope of things, a Surface hardware event is not as super important as, a build or I/O or an Ignite or whatever. So there are models for those. Microsoft has virtual days, where it's just a live stream and it's one thing. They could do several live streams if you want to follow different courses or whatever it is, different topics.
Right.
It could just all be on demand. In some ways, for the speakers, if you're especially the Microsoft guys who are not, paid extra to be there or whatever, it's not like a third party guy who's like excited to show up and make $100 or whatever, whatever the amount is, $1,000 or whatever. It might be easier and less stressful to be able to record this thing. If you screw up, you can go back and re-edit it and have it prepared in advance, and it's kind of nice. Maybe this
no demo
in some
fails.
ways.
That's true. Yes, you're not going.
It happens to all XAML developers, Mary Jo. Don't make fun of that.
The Wi-Fi's not connecting.
It is going to be interesting, especially now because Microsoft is telling people they have the option to stay home and not come in. So, the way they've typically produced these big events is they go into the office and they go to Channel 9, or they do it in a very professional studio environment. But what if they just are relegated to using their own webcam at home like we do here, right?
Yeah. I think it could be fun.
It could be fun.
like that.
Aside from all the disease and death. I don't know. I mean, just try to make the best of what it is.